Hello, I'm Claire Davis.
I'm Lydia Davis. And I'm Erica Sundin, and the title of our capstone project is The Effect of Creative Writing Instruction on Adult Literacy Skills and Self-Perception in Low-SES Populations.
The purpose of our project is to explore the impacts of a series of creative writing workshops on the literacy skills, motivation, and self-perception of low-income adult learners.
With this project, we want to address the question, does creative writing instruction improve writing skills, motivation, and self-efficacy among low-SES adult learners?
As a whole, adult literacy receives limited attention in the research, particularly the topic of writing instruction and adult education. However, many adults in the United States lack the writing skills necessary to meet the demands of higher education and to be successful in the workplace.
According to the National Commission on Writing, difficulties with writing are likely to follow students into adulthood and put them at a disadvantage for finding employment or developing other life skills. Adults with low socioeconomic status or other risk factors such as learning disabilities or intellectual disabilities may be especially affected.
One article related to this project is the 2008 study completed by Mellard and Patterson titled Contrasting Adult Literacy Learners with and Without Specific Learning Disabilities. As reflected in the article's title, this study sought to examine the similarities and differences between adult learners with and without one or more specific learning disability, or SLD. Of the 311 individuals who completed the study, 29% reported having at least one SLD. Study participants were recruited from a pool of students across 13 adult literacy programs. With each participant, researchers conducted structured interviews, reading assessments, and an IQ assessment. To determine differences between the SLD and non-SLD groups, the researchers performed univariate and bivariate analyses of 32 variables considered important to adult literacy. Researchers performed additional data analyses to compare reading performance between the groups. Results of the study showed that both SLD and non-SLD groups shared a number of characteristics, such as a disproportionately large number of individuals living near or below the federal poverty line. However, individuals with SLD demonstrated greater likelihood of low reading scores, negative self-perceptions of abilities, previous enrollment in special education, being middle-aged, living in a household earning less than $10,000 annually, and continued difficulties with reading, even with attainment of a high school diploma. Individuals with SLD and poor reading performance were more likely than others to report less life satisfaction, and SLD was ultimately found to be a significant contributor to variation in reading level once age and IQ were accounted for. Based on this information, study authors suggested that the presence of an SLD is relevant to adult education instruction. Strengths of the study included its relatively large sample size for an adult education study, the use of standardized assessments in addition to interviews, and the inclusion of a relatively wide age range in the study sample, as many adult literacy studies tend to look only at young adults. A primary weakness of the study was attrition, given that the study began with 568 participants and ended with a sample size of 311. Another weakness is the way that validity could be impacted by the study's use of convenient sampling and its reliance on participant self-report of SLD diagnosis. Also, overall, longitudinal studies and increased use of even larger sample sizes could be beneficial to research in this area.
The article I'll be discussing is a study that was done in 2008 entitled cognitive and non-cognitive predictors of success in adult education programs. For this study, Leininger and Khalil selected a subsample of data from a previous study that was done in the early 90s. The original study used a between subjects design to examine whether education-focused or employment-focused services were more effective in improving the job market outcomes of welfare recipients. Participants included 40,000 single parents on welfare, 97% of whom were female. Researchers first collected measures of the women's academic achievement in numeracy and literacy, termed cognitive skills, and psychosocial measures of depression and locus of control, termed non-cognitive skills. Participants were then randomized into one of three groups. One group receiving employment-focused services, one group receiving education-focused services, and a control group. In 2008, Leininger and Khalil went back and analyzed a subsample of about 2,000 participants who were interviewed 2 years after the random assignment took place. The independent variables of interest were the participants' cognitive and non-cognitive skills. The dependent variable of interest was whether or not the participant in question had received a high school diploma or GED in the 2 years since beginning the program. The researchers concluded that among women with high cognitive skills, locus of control was a significant predictor of their success in adult education programs, controlling for depression, cognitive skills, and type of instruction received. In other words, women who believed that they had little control over their own lives were half as likely to get a high school diploma or GED. The design of the original study has several advantages, including a large sample size, the fact that it was randomized, and the presence of a control group. There was also a variety of geographic regions represented. A limitation of the study is that 97% of the sample consisted of female participants, so the results cannot be generalized to a wider audience. Since the study did not make use of experimental blinds, bias could also be an issue, as both treatment groups were aware that they were receiving treatment.
The next article related to this project is a study completed in 2011 entitled Promoting Literacy for Adults with Intellectual Disabilities in a Community-Based Organization by Money and colleagues. This study aimed to gather information about the literacy skills of older adults with intellectual disabilities, to identify their literacy needs and interests, and to consider opportunities to enhance and maintain the literacy skills of the clients within the programs of one community-based organization. To gather this information, researchers reached out to community centers that offered services and activities to adults with intellectual disabilities. During the 2-month project, researchers collected data from staff and 13 clients with a variety of formal and informal techniques to capture baseline information and areas of interest. The formal standardized assessments included the Peabody Picture Vocabulary Test, the Neal Analysis of Reading, and the Neal Analysis of Reading Diagnostic Tutor. The informal qualitative instruments used were a Concepts About Print test, a writing sample with the use of a concrete prompt in the form of a personal photo, and a literacy interest survey for the clients about the print types that they may like to read, using the survey items as a guide. The centers themselves were also assessed using 3 instruments to determine the types of literacy materials and activities that were available to clients.
Those instruments were an environmental literacy audit, semi-structured staff interviews to gain information about the clients at the center and the literacy environment created for them, and observations of the context in which literacy activities could take place. Ultimately, the results of the study found that most clients' literacy skills were at age equivalencies significantly lower than their chronological age, but also that there was an interest in literacy activities, particularly writing. However, it was also found that these activities were not highly valued in community programs and were minimally implemented. Most of the print displayed in the centers was functional, for example, posters about fire drill procedures, and were not readily accessible to clients or written in easily understandable language. This suggests that community-based organizations have an opportunity to do more to support the development and maintenance of literacy skills. One strength of this study was the study design. Case studies, in terms of qualitative research, inherently allow for greater generalizability and comprehensibility of the information. Additionally, the study did a thorough job of exploring the literacy experiences of this population through conducting a variety of assessments. The first weakness of this article was that though it is a case study, there was a lack of clarity in the study design itself. Money and colleagues refer to the study as an exploratory project, which is a very unclear description of the design. It is likely that the researchers intended to convey that they were exploring a topic that did not include a great deal of previous research at the time, but it is not explicitly stated in the article that that was their intention. Next, the study had a relatively small sample size of 13 participants or clients. It would be beneficial if similar studies could be conducted on a larger scale, allowing for greater generalizability. Another weakness of the study was the potential for compromised external validity due to the article not including a description of the interview questions or survey questions used with the participants or the community organization staff, which minimizes the study's potential for reduplication. Finally, this study did not describe the process in completing or the duration of the assessments. This not only compromises reliability of the study, but introduces the possibility that participants could become fatigued if assessments are not broken up efficiently.
As stated earlier, our Capstone project seeks to answer the question, does creative writing instruction improve writing skills, motivation, and self-efficacy among low-SES adult learners? This will be accomplished through organizing and facilitating a set of writing workshops for adults with the dual purpose of supporting student engagement and persistence while providing the opportunity to investigate relevant issues pertaining to writing instruction among adult learners.
Prior to the writing workshop, participants will be given a self-assessment and asked to rate their motivation, self-efficacy, and perceived writing skills. After the workshop, participants will retake the self-assessment, and we plan to analyze any differences among the pre- and post-assessments and writing samples collected over the course of the workshop series.
Using what we have learned about the barriers to adult education, characteristics of marginalized populations, and the importance of motivation to long-term success, we hope to inspire interest in and engagement with writing among adult learners in our community.